Good morning, and welcome to Chestnut Hill College for this training. This morning, I'm honored to introduce our presenter, Dr. Nadine Bean, PhD, LCSW. Dr. Bean is also a certified disaster mental health services volunteer with the American Red Cross and works directly with the Armed Forces Program. She has also recently created a new course entitled Social Work with Veterans and Military Families, a Resilience and Trauma-Informed Approach. And so please join me in welcoming Dr. Nadine Bean.
All right, today you're going to get kind of a little mini overview of the course that I'm teaching for the first time in January, the intercession between the fall and spring semesters at West Chester University. And I actually have a flyer about the course. It's for both graduate students of social work and other allied professions, psychology, professional counseling, psychiatric nursing, but also for practicing professionals. And I really want to come from a resilience-focused approach rather than a trauma-informed or trauma-focused approach, being that one of the central values of social work is the strengths perspective, and the emerging fields of psychological resistance and psychological first aid are really foremost in my mind. And that is how I've designed the course and also put together this morning's presentation. So let's start with an overview of the mental health services needs for veterans and military families. Speaking of September 11th, 2001, that is when the war began, both the wars in Afghanistan, and shortly after the war in Iraq. So these are the longest wars in our nation's history. And so far, well over 2 million people have served, men and women, in these wars. Many have served multiple deployments. That's unprecedented in our history as well, the number of deployments. It's not unusual for me to meet a soldier, a man or a woman, who has been deployed 4 or 5 times. In fact, the young man that is serving as our new West Chester University's Veterans Center director has served both in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of returning soldiers and that may be struggling with both the psychological and physiological effects of prolonged combat trauma exposure. And again, I can't emphasize enough how we also need to refer for screening for mild traumatic brain injury. It's this signature, unfortunately, injury of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Their families and loved ones have served too, and they also struggle. So the VA has really struggled to meet the needs of all of these 2 million plus men and women that have thus far served. And they can't reach them all. But there's also complex reasons on the part of the soldier, the returning soldier, that for which they do not access Veterans Administration services. Stigma. Number one, there's still an incredible stigma for military members and veterans about accessing mental health or related counseling services. No two ways about it. The culture in the military, even though all 5 branches of the military now require so-called resilience training or resilience building training, even before deployment. The culture is still one in which it doesn't really seek the seeking of mental health services. People who want to advance in the military in rank, maybe make it a career, consider receiving mental health services as a career buster, unfortunately. Now, today we also live in a world kind of layered with trauma. Everything from the media, television images, films, even YouTube videos, songs with misogynistic lyrics and images, to actual real war and terror experiences, to within the home, domestic violence, child maltreatment, and so forth. So many of the families that we will meet through the Soldiers Project in our private practices, their lives were complex, and perhaps they've experienced many traumas and traumatic losses even before they come to us as part of the Soldiers Project. The screenings that happen with returning soldiers, a lot of them will deny any problems so they can get home to their families. It goes back to why aren't more vets accessing it? They want to be home. So, all right, so prolonged exposure therapy is one of the most effective treatments for PTSD, according to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and the National Center for PTSD. PET helps to decrease stress about trauma-related thoughts, feelings, and situations that remind you of the trauma. Okay? And repeated exposure to those thoughts, feelings, and situations, and that's where the CBS video comes in, and I'm going to show you a segment, reduces the power that they have over the person. If they can go back to them and work through them, and it's a very intensive approach with the therapist side by side, helping the person through visualizing the traumatic experience and getting through it better and better. It's a very, to me, hopeful approach. You can get through this. You can see it in your mind's eye, but you can get through this better and better without your heart rate racing, without your blood pressure going up, without you crying or feeling through flashbacks that you are right there again, without and reducing maybe the nightmares.